Imagine this. You wake up one morning and the air feels different. The same walls surround you. The same morning light fills the room, but something invisible has shifted. You sit up, look around, and realize that the life you have built no longer feels like home. The things that once drove you now seem strangely hollow. Success, relationships, habits, all still there, yet drained of something vital. You try to shake it off. You scroll through your phone, you plan your day, you convince yourself it's nothing more than fatigue. But beneath that routine calm, there's a silence you cannot explain. It follows you from room to room, soft but insistent, like an echo that wants to be heard. You begin to wonder if the silence is not empty at all, but full of questions you've spent years avoiding. When meaning begins to slip away, the first feeling is not clarity, but loss. We are taught that understanding brings peace, yet when you start searching for what is true, it feels as though the ground itself disappears beneath your feet. You begin to see through the stories that shaped you, the promises of happiness, the definitions of success, and you realize that most of them were borrowed. They never really belonged to you. This is where the pain begins, because before meaning can heal, it must wound. It must tear through everything false that you've built around yourself in order to survive. You have been trained to believe that pain is a problem, that discomfort means something is wrong. But the deeper truth is that pain is the first sign of awakening. It is the sound of the mask cracking. Carl Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the meeting with all the parts of yourself that have been exiled from your awareness. The polite surface of your life begins to split open, and what lies beneath demands to be seen. It is uncomfortable, even terrifying, but it is real. You are no longer pretending. You are no longer asleep. Meaning, when it comes, does not arrive as comfort. It arrives as disruption. It dismantles what no longer serves you and leaves you standing face to face with what you've become. The person you thought you were begins to die, and something wordless begins to stir beneath the ruins. It doesn't promise happiness or certainty. It promises truth. Imagine standing in a vast desert beneath a dark sky. The torch in your hand is flickering. Your footprints are fading behind you, and the silence presses in like a weight. You've been told there is light ahead, but you begin to doubt the map, doubt the guide, doubt yourself. Yet still something calls you forward, not from above, but from within. That call is meaning. It doesn't comfort you, it challenges you. It doesn't promise safety, it demands surrender. This is why it hurts. Meaning is not gentle, because it has to undo years of illusion. It strips away everything you used to rely on: approval, identity, control. It exposes the gap between who you pretend to be and who you truly are. And in that exposure, you feel naked, uncertain, fragile. But it's only in that state of vulnerability that something real can enter. Modern life teaches us to fix discomfort with distractions. We are told to stay busy, stay positive, stay efficient. But there's a kind of truth that only reveals itself when you stop running. When you allow yourself to sit in the raw ache of not knowing, something begins to shift. The pain that once felt like chaos begins to feel like direction. It's as if life itself is whispering, "Now you are ready to see." The paradox is this: meaning doesn't arise when you add more to your life. It arises when you begin to let go. The ego, addicted to control, calls that death. But it's not death, it's transformation. The self that sought comfort dies, so the self that seeks truth can live. You start to ask questions that make the world tremble a little. Why do I chase things that never fulfill me? Why do I avoid silence as if it were dangerous? Why do I call comfort happiness when it leaves me numb? These questions do not lead to answers. They lead to depth. They pull you out of the surface world and into the center of yourself. And once you step into that center, you cannot go back. The old life continues, but you are no longer fully in it. You are watching it from a distance, like an actor who suddenly remembers the play isn't real. Something deeper is waking inside you. That awakening hurts because it's real. It doesn't flatter your ego. It doesn't tell you you're special. It tells you that you've been asleep, that you've mistaken noise for meaning, and that now it's time to see. Meaning hurts before it heals because it must cleanse you of illusion. It must dissolve the version of you that was built to survive, so that the one meant to live can finally take its place. This is the threshold every soul must cross, the quiet apocalypse before rebirth, And so you stand at the edge of that silence, afraid but curious. You don't know what lies beyond it. You only know that the life you've been living can no longer contain you. Something is calling, and even though it burns, you follow. This is where the descent begins, the descent into truth, into depth, into the place where pain becomes the language of transformation. When the search for meaning begins to hurt, most people think something has gone wrong. They assume the pain is a mistake, a malfunction of the mind, a sign that they have lost their way. But the real problem lies deeper. The pain appears because the world we have built no longer fits the shape of the human soul. From childhood, you were given a map of reality drawn by others. Parents, teachers, culture, all handed you a ready-made script for who you should be. Work hard, be kind, stay productive, achieve more. Smile even when you are dying inside. You learn to perform rather than to live. And performance brings applause, not fulfillment. Carl Jung warned that this false self, the mask we wear for survival, slowly begins to suffocate the inner one. The persona is the armor that protects us from rejection, but over time it becomes a prison. Meaning fades because you are no longer living from the center of your being, but from a reflection designed to be admired. The mind calls this success. The soul calls it exile. Modern life has perfected the art of exile. The systems we depend on, education, technology, the economy, train us to value what can be measured. Everything that cannot be quantified, silence, wonder, depth, love, slowly disappears from the vocabulary of value. Aldous Huxley foresaw this in his vision of a comfortable dystopia, a world where pleasure replaces purpose and stimulation replaces thought. We have become so entertained that we no longer remember what it feels like to be alive. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote that man is condemned to be free. What he meant was that freedom terrifies us. We want choice, but not responsibility for the consequences of choice. So we build structures of meaning outside ourselves, religion, ideology, ambition, to avoid confronting the raw freedom of existence. It is easier to be told who you are than to face the truth that you must decide it for yourself. The hidden root of the pain is this conflict between dependence and freedom. The psyche longs to grow beyond its conditioning, but growth means stepping into uncertainty. Every time you question your inherited beliefs, a part of you feels like it is dying, and in a way it is. The old identity resists because it knows that once you see through it, you can never return. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this collapse better than anyone. When he declared that God is dead, he was not celebrating. He was diagnosing. He saw that modern humanity had killed its old sources of meaning, but had not yet created new ones. The result was nihilism, a deep weariness that hides beneath progress and achievement. Without something sacred to orient us, the will begins to feed on itself. It creates endless striving, endless noise, endless motion, but no arrival. Arthur Schopenhauer called life a pendulum, swinging between pain and boredom. Pain when we desire, boredom when we have what we desired. Yet within that grim vision lay a strange compassion. He saw that suffering is not accidental. It is the engine of awareness. Only through confrontation with suffering does consciousness awaken to itself. Meaning, then, is not the absence of pain, it is the transformation of pain into insight. Viktor Frankl proved this in the darkest conditions imaginable. In the camps, he saw that those who survived were not always the strongest, but those who could still locate purpose inside the horror. He discovered that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. The question is not, how do I avoid pain? But what is this pain asking of me? But society has no patience for that kind of depth. We live in a culture allergic to silence. We are taught to medicate discomfort, to swipe away loneliness, to drown uncertainty in content. The modern mind is addicted to stimulation because silence exposes the truth. We do not know who we are without the noise. And that not knowing feels unbearable. So the deeper problem is not that life is meaningless, it is that we have forgotten how to face meaning honestly. We keep trying to outsource it to the next goal, the next relationship, the next idea. Yet every time we look outward, the inner call grows louder. The psyche is not cruel when it makes you suffer. It is demanding that you return home. This is why meaning feels like pain, because every step toward authenticity requires a death of certainty, of convenience, of the person you thought you had to be. The shadow parts of yourself rise, asking for integration. The structures of identity tremble. You feel lost, but that lostness is sacred. It is the dismantling of illusion. If you can stay with that dismantling long enough, you begin to sense another current moving beneath the pain. Something ancient and steady, like a river running underground. It whispers that the collapse is not chaos, but creation. The psyche destroys only what prevents it from growing. The philosophers knew this. The mystics knew it too. They called it purification, transformation, individuation. Different words for the same process, the burning away of what is false, so that what is real can finally emerge. The pain of meaning is the heat of that fire. And while it burns, you must resist the temptation to escape it, for escape only delays rebirth. The human condition is not a problem to solve. It is a mystery to participate in. Pain is not an error in the system. It is the invitation back to life. The question is whether you will accept it, or whether you will numb it with the easy comfort the world keeps selling. The descent continues. And what waits below this layer of awareness is darker, quieter, and far more powerful. The realm of consequences, where everything we have denied begins to shape us from the shadows. When the search for meaning is ignored, the consequences don't appear as explosions. They appear as exhaustion. Quiet, invisible, chronic exhaustion that spreads through your thoughts, your relationships, your very sense of self. You start moving faster but feeling less alive. You fill every silence with sound, every free moment with distraction, because the stillness has begun to feel dangerous. Modern life hides this exhaustion well. It calls it ambition, productivity, networking, success. But beneath all those names is the same condition, a slow suffocation of the soul. You can feel it in the endless scrolling, in the meetings that go nowhere, in the strange loneliness that arrives even in crowded rooms. It is the symptom of a species that has mistaken activity for aliveness. Without meaning, the human mind becomes addicted to substitutes. Pleasure replaces purpose. Achievement replaces growth. Approval replaces love. Every click, every purchase, every victory offers a small chemical reward, a flash of dopamine that feels like direction. But it fades as quickly as it comes, leaving behind an emptiness that demands another fix. And so the cycle continues, faster, louder, emptier. Nietzsche foresaw this. He said that when the old gods die, people will not stop worshipping. They will simply worship whatever remains. In our time, the new gods are comfort and control. We pray to them through screens and schedules. We measure our worth by how efficiently we can manipulate the world. But control without meaning is like breathing in a vacuum. It fills the lungs but not the life. You can see it everywhere once your eyes adjust. The influencer preaching self-love while burning out inside. The executive chasing numbers that never satisfy. The activist shouting into an echo chamber until the outrage itself becomes a brand. All of it is motion without direction, sound without substance. Aldous Huxley warned that the future would not oppress us through pain, but through pleasure. He was right. The soft tyranny of comfort has replaced the hard tyranny of fear. People no longer rebel because they are too entertained to notice they are prisoners. The prison is bright, full of choices, full of noise, but its bars are made of meaninglessness. The brain, deprived of depth, begins to malfunction in subtle ways. It loses the ability to stay still. It seeks constant novelty. It confuses stimulation with significance. Neurologically, this is the burnout loop, the endless chase for a hit of validation that never lasts long enough to feel real. Over time, attention fragments, empathy dulls, and thought becomes shallow. The mind that cannot rest cannot reflect, and the mind that cannot reflect cannot grow. Viktor Frankl called this the existential vacuum. It is the quiet despair that fills a life too full of everything except purpose. In this vacuum, suffering becomes intolerable because it feels pointless. And when suffering feels pointless, people will do almost anything to escape it. They will run toward distraction, toward ideology, toward whatever promises to give them a reason to keep moving. This is how civilizations drift into madness. When individuals lose their inner compass, they surrender it to collective noise. They join tribes not for truth, but for belonging. They mistake certainty for meaning and conformity for peace. You can watch it happen in real time. Outrage cycles, culture wars, moral panics. Underneath the surface, it's not anger that drives them. It's hunger. The hunger for something that feels real. The tragedy is that the search for reality often turns into its opposite. When meaning is absent, people create false intensity to fill the void. Drama becomes identity. Conflict becomes connection. We start to equate emotional noise with depth, forgetting that silence is where depth is born. But silence frightens us because it threatens the illusion of control. To sit in stillness is to face the truth that we do not know who we are. So we drown it out with movement, with talk, with endless plans. And every time we avoid the silence, the void grows stronger. It begins to express itself through symptoms: anxiety, apathy, insomnia, addiction. The body carries the weight the soul refuses to face. Society rewards this sickness. The anxious are called driven. The addicted are called passionate. The numb are called successful. We live inside a collective performance where everyone pretends to know what they're doing, even as they silently disintegrate. The result is a culture that cannot stop performing long enough to heal. And yet the pain never disappears. It changes shape, moves underground, becomes the architecture of our lives. We build relationships on distraction, careers on avoidance, politics on projection. The external chaos mirrors the internal one. When enough individuals lose meaning, the world itself begins to echo their confusion. You can feel it in the way time moves now, fast but empty. Days blur into one another, achievements lose their flavor. Even joy feels rehearsed. We are not living more fully. We are consuming faster. Every advance in technology brings convenience, but convenience is not connection. It is insulation. We are insulated from boredom, from silence, from ourselves. And beneath that insulation, the human soul starves. It longs for something that cannot be downloaded or bought or optimized. It longs for truth, even if that truth burns. The cost of ignoring that longing is visible everywhere. In the rise of depression, the quiet suicides, the endless search for something to believe in. Meaning denied becomes despair. Despair denied becomes numbness. And numbness is the slow death of the human spirit. But there is a strange mercy in this decay. The collapse reveals what was hidden all along. Beneath the noise, the human heart is still capable of hunger. And hunger is the proof that something inside you still wants to live. The pain you feel in the face of meaninglessness is not a sign of failure. It is evidence of life refusing to die quietly. The unseen consequence of avoiding meaning is not destruction. It is disconnection. You do not explode, you fade. You lose the capacity for wonder, the ability to be moved by beauty, the courage to face the mystery of being. The greatest danger is not suffering but numbness, because numbness convinces you that everything is fine while something essential inside you withers. Yet even here, within this quiet decay, the possibility of awakening remains. The pain itself becomes a compass, pointing you toward the very place you tried to escape. And if you can follow that compass, if you can look directly at the emptiness without turning away, you will find that it is not emptiness at all, but a doorway. A doorway into the rebellion. Rebellion begins quietly. It starts the moment you stop pretending that the noise satisfies you. No one around you will notice it at first. On the outside, everything will look the same. You will still wake up, still smile, still perform the rituals of modern life. But inside, a single word begins to take shape. Enough. Enough pretending that distraction is purpose. Enough mistaking approval for love. Enough outsourcing your sense of worth to a world that profits from your confusion. The first act of rebellion is honesty. The courage to say, this isn't working, even when you have no idea what comes next. Carl Jung said that what we resist persists. The only way to reclaim yourself is to turn toward the things you've avoided, the emotions you buried, the fears you denied, the truths you softened to make yourself acceptable. The shadow will not disappear until it is seen. So rebellion means looking inward without flinching, sitting in the discomfort until it begins to speak. The voice that rises from that darkness is not your enemy. It is your guide. Stillness becomes your weapon. The modern world runs on agitation. Every system depends on your restlessness, your need to check, to chase, to prove. When you stop moving, you step out of its control. You begin to see how much of what you called choice was actually manipulation. Stillness is not laziness. It is the refusal to participate in your own hypnosis. At first, the stillness feels unbearable. The mind starts shouting. It tries to drag you back into noise because silence threatens its rule. But if you can stay through the storm, a strange clarity appears. You start to feel space inside yourself, space wide enough for truth to enter. You realize that meaning was never gone. It was simply drowned out by constant motion. Nietzsche called this becoming who you are. He did not mean self-improvement. He meant self-reclamation, the slow process of removing what is not you until only the essential remains. Real rebellion is not about adding more. It is about subtracting what no longer fits. You begin to say no. No to the conversations that drain your spirit. No to the roles that shrink your soul. No to the pressure to be everything except present. Each no makes room for a deeper yes. A yes to time, to silence, to simplicity. A yes to the kind of life that cannot be measured by followers or metrics, but only by aliveness. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that solitude is the price of authenticity. He was right. When you stop performing, some people will leave. They will not understand your distance, your quiet, your refusal to play the old games. Let them go. The loneliness that follows is not emptiness. It is purification. It washes away the noise until only what is real remains. In that quiet, you begin to rebuild, not by constructing, but by allowing. You start to notice beauty again, the way light touches a wall, the way a single breath feels like eternity. You discover that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the acceptance of it. Pain does not vanish, it transforms. It stops being a threat and becomes a teacher. Viktor Frankl called this attitude the last of human freedoms, the power to choose one's response to any circumstance. You cannot control life, but you can meet it consciously. You can turn suffering into meaning by deciding how you will bear it. Every moment becomes a chance to respond rather than react, to act from awareness rather than fear. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Existence precedes essence." You are not born with meaning. You create it. But creation requires freedom, and freedom requires responsibility. The world will not hand you significance. You must sculpt it from the raw material of experience. This is the rebellion's second act, to stop waiting for permission to live. You start shaping your own definitions of success, love, strength. You stop measuring your life by comparison. You let your choices be guided by depth instead of applause. Every small act of integrity, a word spoken honestly, a boundary held firmly, a kindness given without reward, is a declaration of independence from illusion. Over time, the rebellion changes form. It stops being about fighting the world and becomes about aligning with truth. You learn to work, to love, to create from a quieter place. The noise around you continues, but it no longer owns you. You have stepped out of the current, and yet something in you knows this is not the end. Every victory of consciousness carries a shadow of pride. The mind begins to whisper, "I have awakened. I am above the asleep." That too is an illusion, the ego dressing itself in spiritual robes. If you mistake awareness for superiority, the rebellion becomes another form of control. The final act of breaking free is humility. To see that awakening is not an achievement, but a return. You are not conquering the world. You are remembering your place within it. You begin to sense that the point was never to escape life, but to enter it completely, to feel its weight, its mystery, its beauty, without demanding that it make sense. This is where rebellion turns into reverence. You no longer fight the flow of existence. You move with it. The pain, the joy, the uncertainty, all of it becomes part of the same dance. You are no longer the victim of chaos, nor the master of it, but the witness, the one who sees clearly, the one who participates fully. And as you stand in that quiet freedom, something deeper begins to stir, a final realization waiting just beyond thought. The realization that everything you've been fighting, searching, and suffering for has been leading to this moment of stillness, where nothing is missing and nothing needs to be fixed. That is where the journey turns toward its end, toward the truth that does not explain but transforms. The truth that will not just heal you, but change the way you see everything. There comes a moment when the struggle to find meaning collapses under its own weight. You stop reaching. You stop asking life to justify itself. The questions that once haunted you still echo in the distance, but they have lost their urgency. What remains is a kind of still awareness, simple and wordless, as if existence itself has exhaled. You begin to see that meaning was never something to earn or discover. It was never hidden behind success or buried inside suffering. Meaning is the act of being fully present, of allowing life to unfold without resistance. The pain that brought you here was never a punishment. It was the fire that burned away everything that kept you from seeing. For years you were trying to assemble your life like a puzzle, searching for the missing piece that would make it complete. Now you see that the puzzle was an illusion. There was nothing missing. There was only the belief that you needed something more. Carl Jung wrote that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off the shadow, but by embracing it. You feel this truth in your bones. The parts of yourself you once rejected, the fear, the doubt, the desire, the anger, were never obstacles to meaning. They were the ingredients of it. The soul doesn't want perfection. It wants integration. Meaning hurts before it heals because the ego must fracture before consciousness can expand. The self that needed control cannot survive in the presence of reality. And yet when that self dissolves, what remains is not emptiness but fullness, a quiet knowing that everything belongs. The mind cannot comprehend this at first. It wants boundaries and explanations, but life is larger than thought. It does not fit neatly into sentences or systems. It breathes in paradox. You can be wounded and whole, lost and found, dying and alive all at once. This is the mystery that every philosopher touched and every mystic surrendered to. Nietzsche called it amor fati, the love of one's fate, to love not despite your suffering but because of it, to see that every moment, every mistake, every joy, every loss was necessary to shape the awareness that is now watching. Aldous Huxley said that experience is not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens. You realize that nothing was wasted. Even your darkest nights carried light disguised as confusion. Every collapse was a lesson in humility, every heartbreak an initiation into empathy. The universe was not cruel. It was intimate. Meaning does not descend from above like revelation. It rises quietly from participation. It is born each time you meet life without pretense. When you wash a dish, when you listen to a friend, when you breathe with awareness, you are creating meaning. The sacred is not somewhere else. It is here in the ordinary moments you used to overlook, and then you understand why the pain had to come first. Without the breaking, you would have mistaken imitation for truth. Without the collapse, you would have remained a reflection, not a participant. Pain was the invitation to depth. Healing is the acceptance of it. You remember Nietzsche's words, one must have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star. You begin to feel that star inside you now, not as an idea but as a quiet radiance. The chaos was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to make you luminous. The rebellion you began against illusion transforms into reverence for reality. You no longer fight the flow. You let it move through you. You no longer demand that life be fair. You allow it to be vast. The ache that once defined you becomes a pulse of gratitude. You realize that to be conscious, even in suffering, is the rarest gift of all. Meaning is not a destination. It is a direction. It is the movement of awareness toward wholeness. Again and again. You will lose it, find it, lose it, find it. But now you understand that the loss itself is part of the rhythm. The wound is not something to close. It is where the light enters, and it must stay open if you want to keep seeing. You look back and recognize the pattern. The moments of despair, the nights of silence, the longing for something unnamed. They were the steps of the same dance. You were never wandering without purpose. You were being led toward this stillness, where everything and nothing coexist, And in this stillness there is no need to ask what life means. Life itself becomes the answer. You breathe and the act of breathing feels complete. You look at the world, not to understand it, but to witness it. The trees, the air, the faces of strangers, all shimmer with quiet significance. Existence no longer asks for interpretation. It simply is. This is the ultimate truth. Meaning hurts before it heals because it has to strip you of everything that prevents you from realizing that you were meaning all along. You are not a seeker wandering through chaos. You are the awareness through which the universe learns to see itself. The journey doesn't end with revelation. It ends with participation, with the willingness to live every ordinary day as an expression of that awareness, to rise, to fall, to love, to lose, to keep walking, knowing that every step, no matter how small, is sacred. And as you stand in that understanding, silence returns. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of wholeness. The kind that doesn't need to explain or prove. The kind that simply exists, vast and alive. You close your eyes. The world is still here. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. The search is over. You are home.